Welcome everybody to Inside Asian Gaming's Trade Talk. My name is Ben Blaschke, Managing Editor of Inside Asian Gaming. Very pleased today to talk to Senior Vice President of Global Product Management for Scientific Games, Nathan Drane. Nathan, how are you?
Fantastic. Great to see you, Ben, and great to be here. Thanks for having us.
No problem. So, thanks for joining us, Nathan. We're talking today about slot game design, and specifically designing games for the Asian market. So, first of all, what themes have you found tend to resonate most with Asian players?
So, over the years, we've seen a diverse array of themes really resonate with Asia Pacific, but I think something that stands out is particularly the Chinese wealth themes. So, when you think of Chinese wealth, you think of longevity, prosperity, wealth, fortune, and some of the iconography that comes with that is the coins, the red packets, the firecrackers, the turtles. So some of these key elements that resonate through, and if you come back to those key elements, some of the games, particularly from Scientific Games in the market, games like 88 Fortunes or 5 Treasures, and then more recently games like Jinji Baoji are particularly resonating across the Asia Pacific market.
Yeah, as soon as I think about Scientific Games products, they're of course the elements that I think of, as you say, with the coins all over the place, and you look back to turtles. All these elements are certainly very common in your games, of course.
Yeah, and I think those elements really resonate with players, and then the reimagining of some of those elements. If you look at bats, are particularly lucky for players, but the way we've incorporated bats into our pots, when we talk about gameplay mechanics, the pot from Scientific Games on 88 Fortunes and 5 Treasures, and then JJBX or Jinji Baoji is particularly resonant, and part of that is the bats actually fly off the reels into the pot, and that has an affinity with the players. So over the years, not only leveraging those art assets, but actually reimagining them into the games and bring them to players in new thoughtful ways has been interesting as well.
So taking that concept onto sort of specific gameplay features, what do players in the region tend to look for in actual slot gameplay features?
Yeah, I think Asia is a very diverse region. You have distinct segments and distinct categories ranging from mass market, new players coming into the market, through premium market, which is a more established player base, into that VIP segment, which is probably a more mature player in the market. And so across Asia, in Macau, you have all three of those segments, and then you have very diverse segments across Asia. Vietnam's probably more of a VIP style repeat player market. So things that resonate within those different categories: choose your volatility. That's very much a premium and a VIP style mechanic. So players being able to control their destiny, feeling like they are picking a feature, they are picking an element of luck. So you've seen that on our games like 5 Treasures as an example. Other things that resonate, I think, are linked jackpots. So if you look at the mass market, linked jackpots is great. It provides a big, carrot as you walk in that venue. You can see a big prize, a lot of machines contributing to it. The more machines that go on it, the more turnover you're getting through it. So that really seems to resonate across the mass market. But then as you get more into the premium and VIP, you see even standalone progressives work well, where these players like to contribute to their own jackpot and chase that own standalone style jackpot on the machines. So choose your volatility, linked progressives, standalone progressives into that VIP market. And then we've seen more recently things like cash on reels really resonating. So cash on reels is very much a recent trend. So putting the dollar prize or the credit prize straight onto the reels, allowing players to see what they're looking for. We call it what you see is what you get. So very clear understanding of the player where the money is in the game. So that's particularly resonated. Then we've taken that to the next level with the repeat win mechanics, where you win a prize on the way into the feature, and then you're trying to win that prize multiple times within that feature. So that's a more volatile premium towards VIP style mechanic. So there are a few things that have really resonated in terms of gameplay. In terms of elements above the reels or outside of the game, I think, as we talked about, persistent pots would be something that's resonated. That was kind of created, that innovation was created by Element Studio out of Sydney. And that pot mechanic has resonated across all of those segments. And really what that's about is a wild lands on the reels, it spins up into the pot can fill up and then trigger a jackpot event. So the players are collecting something, they're contributing to something, and that has really resonated across the Asia Pacific region.
So it sounds, Nathan, obviously, as you said, progressive links, they've always performed well in the region, but I guess players are also, always looking for some new innovations and just new features that they can sort of dig their teeth into as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think things that you've seen, particularly from us, we've taken some of those classic games like Dorfu Dorkai and put them into VIP versions. So 88 Fortunes VIP is an example where you have the standalone progressives. So that's that player really looking for their own jackpot to look at. And then you've got other innovations where we've taken that jackpot feature and put upgrades or boosts in there. So when they're playing that jackpot feature, they have a new experience layered on top of it. And then we've seen other innovations in the market where you've got linked progressives with standalone progressives as well. So you have the two dimensions of that play. So yeah, you really do see variety across the player segments, kind of honing in on those key elements that the players like.
What are your thoughts on crossing over game titles and concepts from global markets into Asia or vice versa? Does that work?
It certainly does for scientific games. I would say that is a well-identified strategy for us. Taking these games, building them for the Asia Pacific region, leveraging the studios that are attuned, have an affinity with this market, which we can dig into, but leveraging those, proving out these games in the Asia Pacific market with that player base has proven very successful taking those games globally. So if you look at the pot mechanic for scientific games, you see that across our portfolio globally. You see 88 Fortunes as one of our strongest brands, but you also see extensions of 88 Fortunes called Dancing Drums Prosperity, Five Treasures Explosion as some of the more popular games in the North American market if you look at Islas. So Dancing Drums Explosion, as an example, is the #3 WAP game in the market right now, or wide area progressive, so linking those jackpots across multiple venues. And Dancing Drums Prosperity is the #1 new for sale game in North America right now. So that strategy is certainly proven fruitful, taking games to Asia, leveraging that player affinity, understanding it, and then taking that globally. So that's certainly something we will be continuing to do, and I think you'll see products coming from us in that area. And then the other thing is bringing games from global markets to Asia Pacific. And I think the key benefit there is we are making significant investments in global content. We are creating new categories like persistent cash in the Australian market with a game like Kraken, or Cash Falls, which is also a persistent cash with a different style mechanic. And so we can take those games, prove them out in markets like Australia and North America, and then bring them back to Asia Pacific and try and cultivate a new persistent reels category. So we find that particularly interesting and something we're actually pursuing in the present.
So when you do bring games into Asia Pacific from global, Nathan, are there certain key adjustments that you need to make to themes and imagery and mechanics just to make sure they do resonate in Asia?
I think what you see from us is a combination. You see us customizing games for the market, and we have a wide history of doing that, and we will continue to do that, and that'll be a large focus. And then also bringing new games, new themes to the market that may cultivate that segment. So it's definitely a combination, and that comes down to the portfolio management and finding that right balance between understanding the market, building for the market, versus finding those new trends.
In terms of the players themselves, Nathan, I mean, Scientific Games probably best place to talk about this as anybody is really in terms of how players compare from region to region. But from a global perspective of player type and versus Asia Pacific region, is there a difference in players and what they like?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think because the market's so diverse, you've got a very well established market coming out of Malaysia with the traditional Genting style casino. You have Vietnam, which has been more established. Then you've got Macau, which is more recent, right? You've got 2004, the first casino opened. So you've got probably a less mature player base coming into there every day. I think the statistic a few years ago was around 30% of players coming through every day were first-time players. Of course, they have very robust and more mature players. But because of that, I think you see a dichotomy across Asia, and that's why I think you see a diverse portfolio from us in terms of the way we approach the market. So yeah, good question, difficult one, but I think you see all the categories play out across the gaming world in Asia Pacific.
What about some of the new innovations that Scientific Games specifically has been introducing recently, Nathan, to enhance player stickiness and loyalty to your games?
Yeah, so I think a few of these things are kind of covered, which is we're introducing these cash on reels mechanics now. We really like that for the Asia Pacific market. We really like to identify up front, what you're looking for, that what you see is what you get methodology, that repeat win off the back of that, you win it and then you try and repeat it. I think that really resonates with the player base there. I think the other thing for us is it's a technology and a hardware play in terms of we're creating a more flexible platform called the Argos platform, which enables us to build games for Asia and then globalize them more quickly, or build games for North America or Australia and likewise globalize them to Asia Pacific. And what you see with that is you'll see an increased amount of content, you'll see an increased amount of flexibility across cabinets, and you'll also see the Cygames hardware portfolio coming into the Asia Pacific region. So cabinets like Cascada Portrait, which is launching later this year, really exciting to follow the heels of North America, where that has been a very strong cabinet. So it's a combination of content, mechanics, technology, and hardware that are really the innovations we're bringing to the market.
A very broad question for you, Nathan. Obviously, studios are at the heart of what you guys do. I mean, they're the ones pumping out this content. What makes for a great designer or a great studio?
Well, that is a very difficult question to answer because there's so many different types of studios and there's so many studios that have a unique approach. It's a creative process at the end of the day. But what I will say is the best studios that I've ever seen are the ones that are attuned to the market. They're in the market, they're playing the games, they're attuned to the players and they're listening to the customers. And then they're taking that back and working on their games through that lens. And that's an interesting studio approach, right? Because you can't always do what the market exactly says. You kind of have to look ahead of the market. So these studios are really almost future casting when they're developing these games, but taking all those inputs in terms of players, in terms of games, in terms of customer feedback, and then future casting where the market's going to be. That's what makes the most successful studios in my experience. And I will say, obviously the Element Studio I mentioned, who created the pot, the Perceived Persistence pot, and the 88 Fortunes. That studio, not only based out of Sydney, but Quinn Yu is also from China and has the Qingdao studio. So you have a studio in China working on Asia Pacific games. So we're making sure we're not only staying close to the market, but we're in the market and we're really understanding the local culture across the Asia Pacific region. And that harks back to the question, which is what makes successful studios. And I think that's proof of that point of being in the market and attuned to it.
Just on that, Nathan, I mean, as you say, you've got many different studios doing many different things. To what extent some of your studios, working together and helping each other refine and perfect a product?
Yeah, so we have creative centers across the globe. So you've got a creative center in Chicago, creative center in Las Vegas, Reno, India, and then of course Australia, and I just mentioned Qingdao in China. So all of these teams are actually collaborating in terms of our approach to building a portfolio, understanding what each other is working on, and that's a key part of globalizing content, but also understanding trends across the markets. So I would say very much in lockstep from a studio model across the world.
Sure. We spoke right at the start, Nathan, about certain game themes and imagery that appeal to players across the Asia Pacific region. Looking forward a bit, and what do you sort of see as being the future of game themes throughout Asia?
Yeah, so I think I'll keep my hands a little bit close to my chest, but we have plans, of course, to innovate across the Asia Pacific region, but also leverage our franchises, which have set Cygames in good steam there. So if you look at the Dorfu Dorkais or the Jinji Baojis and taking those brands and extending upon them, and then layering in new mechanics to the market, I think that's where we're excited, and that's what we're excited to share soon with the Asia Pacific market.
And just lastly, Nathan, in terms of Scientific Games as a whole, obviously a very large and very successful portfolio. What do you think sets Scientific Games apart from other suppliers in the market?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think Scientific Games is the amalgamation of multiple companies, and that, in my mind, is a strength, because you have different skill sets within those companies, different styles of games, and you have a lot of proprietary IP to leverage, both in terms of mechanics and themes. If you look across the global portfolio, right, from your 88 Fortunes to your Dancing Drums to your Heidi's Beer House to Willy Wonka, I think that's a great diverse portfolio that's coming together. And if you are in lockstep and talking, you can leverage that knowledge of how those mechanics were built and how those brands were built. And I think that's part of the power of SG.